I am the only one in the world who's here right now. Because it's effing stupid. But I was able to kind of go, how cool is this? I'm getting blasted by rain and wind. I'm slipping, I'm falling, I'm cutting my knees up. But I'm the only one on the entire trail. I'm the only one in the world having this experience at this time.
Yeah.
So that would not have happened without Born to Run, for sure. It was a electrifying perspective change. If your belief is, I'm going to enjoy it for its own sake, then you can never lose and you can never stop. You can always just go and go.
Yo. Hey, man.
Welcome to the BeRad Podcast.
Feel welcome.
Woohoo!
I was offered beers. I got water.
Yep.
I got a security dog over there in case my emotional support needs some reinforcement.
Yeah, she'll get you, but
On demand.
she'll probably take a nap, hopefully eventually. But with me today, I have Chris McDougall, New York Times bestselling author, and probably the most influential book in running. And I'd say in fitness too, because I think it changed a lot of people's relationship with fitness, including a lot of my family members, which is pretty cool. Chris McDougall.
Go on. I want to hear about the family members.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've always been an athlete and someone who's just like to move for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And my family didn't really get it. And then they read your book, maybe 2012, and they were like, I think I want to run. I was like, I've been telling you guys. It feels good.
So there's a little bit of spite. There's a little bit of resentment in your towards me from you. You're like,
I was like, hey.
don't listen to me. But this idiot shows up with the barefoot stuff, and all of a sudden he's like, Jesus Christ.
The barefoot stuff, the like, hey, running doesn't have to be exercise. And I preach that to my sister once a year, still actually. But it's cool. And I think that is maybe the barefoot message aside, which is probably what Born to Run is most famous for. But I think what the unspoken song of Born to Run is the relationship to exercise in general. So congrats on that. I hope it lasts. It seems like it's still, we were on a call the other day and someone was like, have you guys ever read Born to Run? And I'm like, matter of fact.
I lived it, buddy.
Yeah, I lived it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I'm curious how, in this last decade plus, and even where you are now, how would you describe yourself to the community, to the ultra running community, or to someone you meet on the street that's wondering what you do?
I would probably go with whatever was in my brain like the last 30 seconds prior to the question. And what it is now is I got a buddy that I body surf with, and I was picking him up over in Mount Wheelie, and I'd never actually been in that neighborhood. And we're driving through his neighborhood. I'm like a dog with my head out the window, like, oh my God, man, look at the mountains, look at this, look at this. And he goes, you got like a beginner's mind. I'm like, yeah, okay. And he goes, no, that's a thing. Like it's a terminology in psychology, a beginner's mind. It's like one step removed from ADHD, or probably ADHD like in other language.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm totally shiny object, throw to frisbee kind of thing. Like I get really interested in what I have no idea what I'm talking about. You know? So.
Oh, you're talking to me, who's exactly like that, and to my now husband, who's also exactly. I know. Just got married. First podcast since I, got hitched. So.
Hey, we gotta tell people how this happened.
Yeah, so we were running, or you were running with some friends, and I was doing a hard workout, and I was like, oh shit, Chris. And we started talking because I know Luis Escobar, who is a mutual friend of ours, and someone who was involved in Born to Run, took me in when I was like 20 years old, and I lived with him in Beverly. They brushed my hair, and it literally, like, Beverly would be like, Kat, I'm sitting you down. I'm getting these knots out right now. And
You're like a wild child taken out of the woods, like
dude,
raised by wolves. And
talk to them about it. Beverly was like, what do I do with this child?
Yeah.
And really, they took care of me, and that's really how I got into trail running. I they convinced me to run this trail race. I was running for UCSB at the time, and just struggling, and they were like, come do this race. And I ran a 50K, and went out. I was like in shape for a like 207 800, so I went out like that and went out, was with the 25Kers, and then died very quickly. Learned a lot. Then Lewis was like, just come crew, and that ended up, or come like make pancakes in an aid station. And I was like, what's an aid station? So 1 week later, the next weekend, I'm at Backbone, which is now no longer a race, but the Backbone, right? Yeah. And I'm making pancakes at the finish, and there's all these legends there that Lewis is telling me about, and I'm like, okay.
Isn't it funny the first time you realize, wait a minute, there's a race with pancakes?
I know.
In the middle of the race?
Exactly. And I'm coming from this background, this collegiate background that's very restrictive with food, especially, and that was a super hard culture for me to be in, and to be like, oh, pancakes, like, that's great, I love pancakes. I can get down with that. Trails and like inclusivity and just being with each other, that was my speed for sure.
I feel like I hear that story a lot from people coming out of a collegiate background. Is it's something, wow, there are people who actually will talk to me, look me in the eye, not size me up, that kind of thing.
And it makes running enjoyable again when it's not. I always talk about there's running to and there's running from.
Yeah.
And I feel like often in the collegiate environment, you're running from. You're running away from failure, essentially, because at least my collegiate experience, there was so much pressure, and I was just so afraid to fail all the time. And all of a sudden I'm in this this trail running community where the relationship with running is just to run, not to beat so-and-so, not to do a certain time. And of course now I am super competitive and I love to race, but it's still ultimately my relationship with running is I'm here to enjoy the step I'm in. And that, trail running has done that, because being a naturally extremely competitive person, I was a nutcase as an 800 runner.
Honestly, in Born to Run, I had this one sentence that I remember writing it and thinking, oh boy, my editor's not going to like this. Publisher's going to like it even less. The lawyers are going to pull our hair out. And I basically blamed running injuries on Nike. I said, once running shoes became a massive commodity, then there was this impetus to put more and more garbage into the shoes, which is unproven, doesn't do anything. And people started to rely on the shoes because they're marketed as the cure-all, that you need these to avoid injury. But the other element of it is all that blood money they made off those shoes, they then pour into collegiate competitions and pro stuff. And to me, like, that is the worst thing for any sport. Once money enters the sport, it's dead. It's poison. And unfortunately, professional runners like you rely on it. But I think it's a horrible thing. I think it leads to exclusion. I think it leads to incredible body image issues. I think everything is horrible about recreational athletics. You can trace it back to big companies pouring money into scholarships and sponsorships.
Yeah, and it's tricky for me to say because my whole career, I was teaching before, and I love teaching, but I definitely really am happy for all of the money brands have poured into me and the platform it's given me to do things like this and to be able to start a different career with this. So everything changed in my life in a good way because of running, and money being in running. However, I do know that the message that those brands sell isn't to be present. It's not to love running for the sake of it. It is to push. It is to that running hurts and you should just do it anyway. Literally Nike's slogan is just do it. And that is a great motivation for someone. Sometimes it doesn't, I think it's fleeting, the just do it mindset is fleeting. And I think, what the marketing campaigns around these shoe companies have been to like push further, push longer, be the fastest, you're the champion. And I don't think that's what it's all about. Yeah. Well, and I compete and I love it, but I don't think that's what it's about. I love to race, but I would run no matter what. And I think that is the important message.
Yeah. I think that's the reason why Born to Run endured, and I think it's also really the heartbeat of all of my books since then, is that people, this isn't complicated. It's fun. Kids figured it out when they're 5. The rest of us spend the rest of our lives trying to remember what we knew when we were in kindergarten. But running with Sherman, I'm running with a donkey. And if you don't turn that into a party, it ain't gonna happen. If you're not gonna enjoy it, then you're going to quit because it sucks. And Natural Born Heroes was kind of similar. It was people who would love being out in the mountains. And in a crisis, when the Germans invaded Crete, they were able to turn themselves into resistance fighters because they were natural mountain people.
And I think you hit on something really great talking about Sherman. And I've done some donkey racing too. And if you make it about getting to the finish line from the start, you're going to have just the worst time because that donkey does not give a shit about the finish line.
No one told him it's a race. What is your donkey running experience?
Well, I have this friend in Leadville that rents donkeys to a lot of the racers.
It's not Amber Wan, is it?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, his name's Jim, and he's been in Leadville doing, he's had donkeys for like 30 years. And it's become a business in the last 15.
Yeah.
And so I've done a little bit in Leadville and Buena Vista. Yeah. And if you aren't present in that, and if you're not making making the race about the experience, then that is the only way to fail in a donkey race, because you really can't control the outcome like you can in your own race. And that I think everybody should do that, or at least come into their race and their running with that mentality. If you're in it, that's a success. I think right now we're in a golden era of trail running because it's so accessible to so many more people, and yet it hasn't clicked over into like the road racing mentality, of splits, times, qualifiers, BQing, and the rest of it. Right now, it's kind of us together against the course, not us against each other. And I'm just really curious to see what's going to happen, whether it's going to maintain that way or it's going to become increasingly professional, streamlined, speedy, and... It's totally going to become increasingly professional, and it already has. But I think because every course is different and every race is different and you can be so fast on a road course and just get humbled every single time on a trail run, and that won't stop happening because trail running and with trail runners, everybody has a different strength and weakness, and you can train your weaknesses, but they're still always going to be hard because every course is different. A great example of where there was, the race had some professionalism, but it became like, oh my gosh, we're all surviving, is UTMB by Mexico that I did in October. And Ironman had bought the UTMB series, and I had to do this race to get into UTMB, and I had to podium. And because of that, there was, an appearance fee. There was... they brought a ton of elites out. So it was a small field, but pretty much every single woman was a professional athlete that competed that day. However, it's racing in Mexico where there was no trail. Someone just came with a machete the day before. One of my athletes that I coached scouted the course 2 days before the race, and there was like, there's no trail here. And someone just came with a machete 2 days before the race and chopped it off. And it was 100 miles, for me 120 after some wrong turns. completely off trail, and it was survival.
Yeah.
And this was a UTMB race. I was paid to be there.
Yeah.
But it was, everyone there was like, oh my gosh, we survived. So I don't think it'll truly ever have that road mentality, because there's always going to be an aspect of adventure in a 100-mile race. But I do think the trajectory is going to go towards a more professional, or standardized, I will say, attitude. And I think there will always be pockets where, it's just, let's go out and have a 100-mile adventure. And I think that is unique to trail running.
Yeah. Do you know about the 26-point true marathon in Boston?
No, I don't.
It's my new heartthrob. Do you see little hearts floating over my head?
I see them.
Because of 26-point
Yeah.
true. So there's two groups up in Boston, Pioneers and Trailblazers. They are predominantly people of color running club in Roxbury and Dorchester, which are like inner city Boston neighborhoods. And so they were begun by people of color who, men of color are not comfortable running through the streets because idiots will chase them.
Yeah.
So they started Pioneers and Trailblazers, super fun groups, big. They do track workouts. These are competitive runners and recreational. And they're like, man, Boston Marathon isn't really in Boston. 90% of it is out in the suburbs.
Yeah.
It's like, Newton, Hopkinton. It's only the last 6 miles are actually in Boston. So 2 days before the Boston Marathon, they now do the 26-point true.
Wow.
Which runs through 13 different neighborhoods in downtown inner city Boston. But it's the same thing. 8 stations are in someone's grandmother's driveway or the back of somebody's car. So it's one of these things of I guess we're going to start here and I guess we're going to end there. And it's all just improvised aid stations and timing and the rest of it. But if you look on social media and you look at the pictures, you look at the Boston Marathon, there's a Boston Marathon face. Holy shit, pain tunnel. You look 26-point true. People are just bursting with joy.
Wow.
Because hey, this is us. It's our neighborhoods, our friends.
That's so amazing.
People screeching. So I was supposed to be there this year, but I'm going to be at Lewis's
Nine
Born to
Trails?
Run Extravaganza. He had to call off Nine Trails because it would have been the 18th. It would have been next weekend.
Yeah.
But he nixed that. So I said, okay, if I can't be there, then I'll come to the Born to Run Extravaganza instead.
Wow. Yeah.
Hey, we got a new. We got a new thing that we're going to do. I think he hasn't fully signed off on. Let me ask you if you would do this. If you're at the Born to Run Extravaganza and you saw a blood donor van.
Would I donate blood?
Yeah.
Maybe. I got a tattoo with one of them. So what's the difference?
Right?
Yeah.
You and me both. I got a 4-toed foot.
Was that by Drunk Mike or AKA Prison Mike?
Either Prison Mike or Honest Bob, one of those two guys.
Honest Bob, yeah.
Yeah.
Mine was the first year that Drunk Mike, aka Prison Mike, came to Born to Run, and I was like, I'm gonna get a tattoo, and Lewis was like, no, you're not, and I'm like, yes, I am. And the original idea was to get right before Born to Run, Lewis took me and my friend Sean, who was just a bridesmaid, and a few other people. Pat Sweeney was there, and on a rim to rim. And the whole time he was like, slow down, kid. And I was like, fuck you, Lewis. And I ended up having a super strong day. I was running up Bright Angel, fuck you, Lewis. I told you, I'm fine. And after that, I told him I was going to get fuck you, Lewis on my calves, which young and dumb and drunk, I almost did. Luckily, I know. Now I think back now, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Now I'm like, thank God. But he told me it was going to be the biggest honor of his life. And I was like, that's even more reason to do it. So Drunk Mike almost did that on me. And luckily, I have good friends.
So I'm supposed to write an article about Lewis for Ultra Runner sign up. They're putting content online and say, hey, we want you to do a profile of Lewis. I'm like, what am I going to say? And then I said, you know what? The title is going to be The Most Dangerous Man in Running, Lewis Escobar. Because the fact that you came within maybe a half a beer from getting fuck you, Lewis, tattooed on your body, different timing, different alcohol content, that might have been on your body right now.
I know.
goated by
He's
him.
also a huge reason that I stopped running track at UCSB. So, it's true. And
Which he is.
He is,
right.
yeah.
He ruined your track career. There are 7 people with his name tattooed on their bodies.
oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm sure he just is like, that's fucking weird. I can see him saying that.
But you know what? Like, they don't have my name tattooed on their bodies.
Right?
He's up to some kind of satanic shit
I
going
know.
on.
Something I was thinking of when we started talking about this interview was that Born to Run has almost this national cult following. I had actually my collegiate coach was like, chia seeds only, and I was, and it's so crazy. But I'm starting to realize that maybe Lewis is the cult guy.
Totally. Well, it's funny because the whole Born to Run extravaganza that he does was my idea, but I would never do it. I was like, and so I'm the kind of guy, someone should really, and Lewis is the guy who's like, I'll get it done, you know? So I'm like riffing off on ideas, and Lewis was like, okay, I'll get a ranch, I'll do this and this and this. So, but yeah, I said to him years ago, I was thinking I was going to call it like the Renaissance Festival, like a Renaissance fair, but for running. People would show up, because that's what Caballo did down in the canyons. Like, he didn't want a bunch of strangers showing up, fire a gun, run and go home,
Yeah.
He wanted people to actually like get to know each other. And by the way, when it's time to race, now you're ready to race, because like, oh, I know that guy. I've had like 6 dinners with him, you know, I've met his mom, whatever. I know this dude, and I'm really in a competition. And so that's what Caballo did. And then I was saying to Lewis, like, what if you had something where people were like playing music and juggling and just doing stuff for a couple of days, hanging out, and then bam, fire the gun and let them just go after each other's throats. And that's what he created. So I would totally agree with you. I'm more of the talking shit in the bar kind of guy, and Lewis is a guy like, oh, take the idea and actually turn it into something real.
Yeah, he's also the talking shit in the bar kind of person, but he wakes up and somehow gets it done the next day.
Yeah.
But, I don't want to spend too long on Born to Run, but I do want to ask, in what ways, other than the obvious that you've talked about before, has Born to Run really changed your life?
Yeah, it's been huge and surprising, because we were saying earlier that if I had to describe myself, I'm the guy with the beginner's mind, but that's purely what was going on with Born to Run. I was not a runner. I was down on running. I was probably about a good 60 pounds heavier than I am now, but I was used to it. Like, hey, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5", 260, 270. That's so be it, And every time I tried to run, I got injured. And the doctor said, of course you are. You're built like Shrek. You don't see Shrek running very much. That's why. And so when I went into running, it was with a skeptical, oh, this is for the other people mindset. And then when I started to think, oh, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can enjoy it. Maybe it can be fun. 2 things happened. One was I was lucky to be able to capture that firefly in the bottle at the moment. Like the same experience I was having, I was able to put that into a story. So people are like, wait a minute, if this fat idiot can do it, anybody can do it, right? It's accessible to the whole world. And the second thing was, it made me really kind of like happy and hopeful and skeptical all at the same time. I feel like anything out there, people say all the time, like, follow your dream, you can do whatever you put your mind to. But most of it got bullshit, I'm never going to become like an Indianapolis car driver, like, it might be my dream, and not going to happen. But then I started to think, but the experience, the joy of it is accessible to anybody. So that there's a kernel of truth there, which is that if you want to be a really good paraglider, the experience of trying to get there. I mean, back up a second. I think the problem with running is that we're so focused on performance. If you open up any issue of Runner's World, how to run your fastest 5K, how to train for a marathon, it's race, 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 race. What you never saw was slow down, enjoy, have fun, run with a friend, run with a group, run with your dog, run with your baby, It was always about the performance stuff.
Yeah.
And I think what was, you said at the beginning, if you're running with a donkey and you're focused on the finish line, you'll never get there. If you just focus on the moment and the donkey and the experience, if you take that breath and go, oh my God, I'm out here in the Rockies with a donkey. Like, how cool is this? You smell like the donkey's sweat fur, and you see the skyline. You're like, holy shit, there are so few people doing this. I did a little posting up on the Pillbox. I went there one day, and I saw clouds coming in. Like, oh, I'm fast enough. I'll be off before the rain hits, and I just got blasted. And I just did like a little Instagram post like, I am the only one in the world who's here right now. Because it's effing stupid. But I was able to kind of go, how cool is this? I'm getting blasted by rain and wind. I'm slipping, I'm falling, I'm cutting my knees up. But I'm the only one on the entire trail. I'm the only one in the world having this experience at this time.
Yeah.
So that would not have happened without Born to Run, for sure. It was a electrifying perspective change where I saw that the focus on competition, which I was a product of. I was a collegiate rower. I was captain of Harvard heavyweight crew. I was rowing 24/7 for 8 years through high school and college. So to walk away from that, where it's win, 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 train, 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 and then realize, man, it's just enjoy, fun, smile. That's what changed things for me. And to be able to take that power, that's the superpower. If your belief is I'm going to enjoy it for its own sake, then you can never lose and you can never stop. You can always just go and go.
Yeah. What would you tell, people who are runners and athletes, they hold on so tightly to that? What would you tell an athlete that knows that they're about to go into a period of rest, or they have a surgery scheduled or an injury? What would you tell that athlete who's like, I can't, I want to be present in what I'm doing. That's where I derive my own happiness. I don't know what to do, knowing that I'm going to have these few weeks injured.
That's golden opportunity. Like, to me, that is the moment to be treasured. And if people can realize, because what almost none of us do is look at running as a craft, like learning an instrument. Mm-hmm. And because we get into it and we just do it. And then we're in a race and we just do it. So none of us actually, very few of us ever take the time to actually analyze our form, how we're moving our body, our posture, our balance, our rhythm, our foot strike, our cadence, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. You probably go out the door and you run, and you're focused more on pace, but you're not really looking so much at cadence. You're not thinking so much about foot strike because you have something that works for you. You're able to go 100 miles and under extraordinarily fast conditions. And so I'm assuming that whatever kind of like transmission you got going on, you're satisfied with it. However, did you ever say, hey, I'm just going to take 5 weeks and actually examine all of it? I'm not going to run hard. I'm going to see, can I run 180? Do you run 180 strides per minute, by the way?
Yeah, and I do. And I do really pay attention to that. And I am someone who has very intentionally seen running as a craft. And it was interesting because I was listening in prep for this, listening to some podcasts that you've done in the past, and you said that, and I was like, oh, I've been preaching that to my athletes for years. That's so cool. And I asked this because you touched on a couple of amazing points, and I'm in this period where in a couple weeks I'm going to get this procedure where I'm going to be on crutches for 3 weeks. And I have taken time in my past where I've been like, I'm not going to do any speed works for 5 months. I'm just going to go run because I love it. And I have had periods where I've been like, I'm going to, from top to bottom, I'm going to figure out everything about my stride because I broke my pelvis and had a back injury in 2015. I was hit by a UPS truck. Boo. And I know. And so I have spent a lot of time doing that and spent a lot of time appreciating running. And I'm in this period where I'm like, okay, this is the first time where I'm going into something where I'm like, about to have to stop completely. Yeah. And where do I find that ability to be present and appreciate that I'm the only one here, that I find so much in running.
Yeah. I know it's funny because as I was saying, like, you. I thought, wait a second, actually, I'm across from a person that this might not be true about. Mm-hmm. Or nobody, well, maybe this person does.
Yeah.
How did you, there's two things to unpack there. The 3 weeks is very tempting. My instinct would be do nothing. Do nothing. Crutch on down to Lani Kai Beach, sit in a chair, read books, enjoy the sun, get fat. Like let your body get strong in a fully dormant caterpillary mode, That'd be my advice. But that's also my advice for everything, sit on the beach and...
I think that's likely what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to be forced to do that. It's the mentality of being present. And that is something.
Do you cook?
No.
There's your 3 weeks right
I
there,
know.
my friend. Really have fun with that, you know?
Carson's like, score. the one
Yeah,
that does
right,
all the
right.
cooking. My cooking is, here's some frozen pizza.
Yeah. Eat it yourself. I
I
delivered
made it myself.
Yeah. Your cooking is delivering.
Yeah.
I mean, now my problem is you can't give me an opportunity to start nagging and pushing because I won't stop.
Yeah.
Now, I think cooking's fantastic for you because, again, that's another thing, too, that so many runners struggle with, this idea that their running is going to conquer their eating when it's the other way around. You know, your eating is the pathway to good running. But that can be really cool for you to actually get into it. You know, Lucy Bartholomew has her own cookbook. Are you vegetarian or vegan or anything?
No.
So you go for, is this the perfect place, man?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got some cool stuff for you. My daughter showed me this thing she got off of TikTok. It's these kind of like poke bowls, really. But what you do is you mix either the ahi or the cooked salmon with vegetables and rice in a bowl, and then you take these little seaweed squares.
Oh, yeah.
And you scoop them up and make these little, these little balls
Yeah.
of rice and fish and vegetables and furikake and pop it in your mouth.
So good.
I would do that, my friend. I would take those 3 weeks and say, I'm going to invest it in learning about food, on the go things, All right, you've heard my
No.
lecture.
Yeah. I think you're right. And that's part of the reason that I think I struggle with cooking is because I have just like extreme on the ADHD spectrum. My teachers hated me.
Right on,
yeah,
girl.
baby,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
go.
yeah, for
Pew,
sure.
Pew, pew, pew,
Totally.
Pew, pew, pew. Can't sit still.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all of a sudden I'm faced with this 3 weeks and knowing about it. It's one thing where you're like, oh shit, I'm injured, 3 weeks. It's another thing where I'm like running right now and it's pretty much okay sometimes. And I'm looking at, down the barrel, 3 weeks minimum 3 weeks of like zero.
That's cool. I mean, I tell you, I love to cook. Don't bake.
Yeah.
Baking is for people
That's
who
a
follow.
science.
Yeah, baking for people who actually follow instructions. Cook, and you'll get a feel for stuff. But I think for you too, I would have to imagine. I mean, I was there crewing for Lewis at Badwater one year, and he was really struggling with stuff too because there's this sort of make or break point where your body's just not going to accept the artificial anymore. It just is not going to have another go. It's not going to have another cliff shot. You got to have something else. And he's like eating pieces of cantaloupe and granola and all kinds of stuff. But I mean, it's another kind of secret weapon you can have in your arsenal. Is if you've really dialed in your endurance food, stuff you make yourself, and you know that mile 80, you got a little blob that you've made out of like chia and peanut butter or something.
Yeah.
Go cook, man.
I gotta cook, and that what I was saying is that it'll teach me to like be present in what I'm doing because I'm gonna have to watch the stove, you know.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Which leads me into another.
You're welcome, dude.
Yeah, Carson's like, score.
Yeah.
Finally, something other than cereal. Every morning I'm like, would you like me to make you some cereal?
Toast, little avocado smear, fried egg on top, some sea salt on top of that. It's next level. It's as simple as cereal.
Yeah.
But so it's brunch stuff, You go to a restaurant,
So
you pay
good.
$15 for that stuff. You can make it
know.
at home in 5 minutes.
And I'm like, Frosted Flakes.
I have just become the nagging mother-in-law in your life.
I love it. Honestly, it's great because my own mom is like, Frosted Flakes is a meal. It's fine.
So I think there's and this might be a massively wrong generalization, but it's my specialty. But I think there are a lot of women of your generation and above who deliberately or don't cook because their moms came out of the era where they had to.
Yeah.
And it was shoved down their throats. And I feel like if I were a woman growing up, I would, don't force this on me. I'll cook if I want to, but this doesn't mean I am the chef of the house.
Yeah.
Because for generations of women, it was.
Totally. And I had a very unique mom in that she didn't follow any social norms ever. But I do remember, in high school, the feedback was like, make me a sandwich, and that was like the diss for a boy to girl. And always being rebellious, I did hate that notion. So I think that probably has some kind of subconscious role in that. Like, hey, like I am not just put on this planet to hand you a sandwich.
I wish I could go back and talk to young Kat and say, have you guys heard about the knuckle sandwich?
I know. Well, Carson and I went to high school together. You will know that I was an aggressive teenager. I did punch someone once. But
So were you guys in high school on the Big Island?
yeah, on the Big Island.
So that was your full upbringing on the Big Island, or what's your
I
whole
was
migration?
in between, and this is all I'm going to say about me. But I was here in Oahu until 7th grade, and then I went to the Big Island, and where I met Carson, and had just a great experience. And that it was actually really awesome because I was not vibing in the city either. I was, I was just like, I was the kind of kid that would like go on the public bus and just see where it took me. And on the Big Island, I got to leave from the house and go on this. I was trail running before I knew it. I was just going up in the hills of Waimea and gone for hours, and no clue where I was going. No one really to check on me. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And so that before I even knew trail running was a sport, before Born to Run, I came out. That's where I found love of the outdoors and being present. And actually a cool segue. In prep to this, I was listening to your Rich Roll podcast, and you were talking about how Micah or Cabaya Blanco, he would just run, and that was his craft, and that's what he did every day because that's what he wanted to do. And it wasn't about the running, it was about the being. It was about I don't even want to say the movement, but it was just about like the being in his body and doing what he loved to do. And that, as I was listening to that, and as I'm home here in Hawaii, the state I grew up in, and Carson and his family, he's Hawaiian, he has rich and deep roots in Hawaii. Kind of a lot of Hawaiian culture is that, just being present in the land and where you're at. And I was just curious, and now you're living full-time in Hawaii and your wife's from Hawaii, and what has any similarities between that attitude and what you've seen in Micah, or what you've seen in the Tarahumara, or anywhere else that you've seen in runners, struck home for you as, a lifestyle that works?
Yeah. Although it's funny, I had a thought when you were talking about Micah. I was thinking to myself, it's funny how much stuff he said I would later embrace and realize it was true. But at the time, it didn't really land because he was so cranky and grouchy.
I met Micah once, and I can understand.
Right?
Yeah.
And same with Barefoot Ted. He's so freaking weird that, like, it takes a couple months to realize, oh, no, it was actually smart. It just was delivered by a freak. And I was trying to think, what if, like, the New Testament Jesus was actually a really cranky Jesus? He's like, fuck off, like the parable of Jesus. Oh, just figure it out for yourself, said the Lord. Maybe a whole different thing. Anyway, so I had a lucky chain of events, or I'm not sure if they're lucky. Maybe, you kind of seek out the path that you want unconsciously. But, we moved from Philadelphia, and we had just moved to Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania, which is an Amish community in central PA outside of Lancaster. And we were living in Peach Bottom, and all of our neighbors were Amish and Mennonite, who still live by like 18th century, very communal, respect the land, respect each other, respect family. Everything's very personal, face to face, little or no digital technology at all. I mean, the Amish don't use telephones. They have a phone. It's outside in the barn. The Mennonites will use some stuff, but again, super minimalist, pre-industrial lifestyle, and we loved it. We were there for 20 years, loved it, and we only moved because of actually the pandemic. We thought, okay, this is a place where we're 30 miles from a hospital in a log home that's heated with a wood stove.
Yeah,
this could go very south very fast during a pandemic. But I think what I would absorb is, I was having a conversation. We have a neighbor named Wes Metzler. And he had 5 daughters, and each one of them successively was our kids' babysitters. So one would age out, and then like the next would step in and be a babysitter for our youngest daughter, and so on. And they're just terrific girls. They're just great kids. And so one day, Wes was coming by, and we're sitting on top of this hill, and we just hung out and sat on the hill for a little while. And I go, hey, Wes, man, what's the secret? Like, how do you raise 5 kids in a row? Each one is awesome as the previous one. And he goes, I think it's having dinner together. I'm like, dude, you can do better than that. You know, steak and potatoes is not the answer. But, you know, it's one of those things where I process it, and I think he was very sincere and on to something. But I love the fact that this guy, present in the moment, he's sitting with me on the hill to shoot the breeze. He's thinking about what I had to say. And his secret for a successful family is what? Be present with the girls as they're growing up. And I would also see from my Amish neighbors all the time. Another time I was picking up a bunch of fence railings I was buying off of a guy. And I would go early in the morning because I would overload. I had this little pickup truck, and I would just load the crap out of it, like totally illegal, oversized load, and then take it down the highway. And I would do it like 5 in the morning before the cops were out. And it was like 5 different loads I had to bring. And so I show up at this guy's farm like 4:30 in the morning. And I go outside, and it's just pre-dawn light. And he'd always be out there just leaning on the fence looking at the horses. And I say, yeah, what's going on? Are they hurt? He's like, no, I just like to watch them waking up. Now, this guy has been around horses dating back 7 generations. Horses are nothing new to him, you know. And yet, 4:30 in the morning, he wakes up, puts his elbows on the fence, and just watches the horse waking up. And what I found here, this just happened to me yesterday. My buddy Dave that I body surf with, he's 65. And we're out of Makapu'u, and we're out in the water, and we're having a ball. We're having a blast, exciting, chihooing. And we get out of the water, and we're walking up, and he's looking around. He's like, this is amazing. I've been body surfing here for 50 years. Like, dude, you've been body surfing here since the Civil War. But he's looking around like it's the greatest thing in the world. So I don't know if my personality is predisposed to that, or I've been lucky to be around people that have kind of showed me the lights. But that's what I feel, you know, just appreciate, look around, think.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on, man, how lucky are we to be here at this moment? Not where we're going to be, not what we didn't do as well as we expected, but, you know, right here, right now.
Yeah.
Cooking dinner for 3 weeks on crutch. How lucky are we?
True. In Hawaii, which is like the most amazing alive place on the planet. Yeah. Having, you know, growing up here, and I really loved growing up here. I was, my grandma moved here when she was a kid, and my dad was born and raised here, and I was born and raised here. And I just, like, every day when I was growing up, like, I was like, Hawaii obviously is where I'm going to end up. And then it became less clear when I was on the mainland. And then, it first started with really missing the ocean. And then when I got here, I was like, oh, it's the ocean, but it's also the lifestyle of just, and, you know, in Honolulu and Kailua, it's a little bit different than some of the other islands, but the lifestyle of the slow pace and doing what you're doing and having dinner together, you know, that is, that's a cultural thing here instead of moving on to the next thing. And like what we were talking about how sometimes performance can be the poison of sports or even exercise, that there's not a lot of that here, you know. Yeah. Hawaii sucks at sports, you know, and it's more about being where you are, you know, being in the place you are. And I think that has been something, you know, I'm going back to the mainland for my racing season, and I find myself sad every day when I think about it, but I'm just I can't get over how much I appreciate being here and having grown up here and having roots here. Yeah. And I just so resonate with a lot of what I was remembering as listening to your podcast with Micah's message, and of just like fucking doing it because for no other reason than to do it, you know. And he had literally said that to me once because I was like a competitive 20-year-old, you know. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
I mean, we think about what he did. I mean, he put himself in a canyon among non-competitive people.
Yeah.
That just move because it's what they're good at, and in a place where it's actually gloriously gorgeous to do it. Yeah. And that was his chosen home. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. I'm always curious. Yeah, and I just want to come back to Hawaii again because it is a complicated state, you know. There's a lot of polarizing ideas here and anger. as Hawaii, the monarchy was illegally overthrown even before Hawaii became a state by military forces, and that's something that the military still occupies a lot of land, and the Hawaiian culture and people are very connected to the land. And I'm just curious, as someone who's married to someone who grew up here and is involved in the community. I know she belongs to a halau, and you living here, this is your first time living here full time in the last couple of years. And what's your experience and take been on this community, how we can better it, and what you do to make this your home, and also recognize that we're privileged to live here. You and me, like, I am not Hawaiian, and I'm lucky to be here. So I'm just curious, because I feel like this is a unique experience, as unique as going to Mexico and running in the Copper Canyons.
So the cool thing is, the short answer is baby steps.
Yeah.
Go slow, look, listen, open yourself to being educated. So my friend Dave, I keep talking about Laiha, he grew up in Kauai and then lives here now. And we were talking about aloha, and I think, I was trying to remember what triggered the conversation, but basically I was saying to him, Dave, I didn't realize aloha wasn't just like throw a shaka and let someone get in front of you in traffic. It like really means something. And then he just went off the entire drive up to actually the North Shore. He was talking about aloha and how he was raised in it, and it was like a cultural thing, and his grandparents and his cousins, it was more of a religion than anything else in their lives. And as he was saying this, I'm like, oh, I'm getting it. Like, I'm understanding it. And I'm living it. I'm kind of seeing it. Like, oh, that's why. That's why the ahi guy acts this way and treats me this way and is so friendly. That's why you're in the water, and, the lineup has a certain vibe, of like, hey, brother, come on in. Like, hey, it's your wave. And so I think if you come in with that really humble respect, that's something that is way more complicated and way older than you have any clue, and you will probably not get it by the time you die. If like that's your mentality, then maybe you're on the right path.
Yeah.
And then really appreciate and see what's there and be grateful. Like, when my wife's kumu brings us over and like cooks for us and makes laulau, like, this is an ancient cooking tradition that someone is honoring us by sharing with us and things like that. So, I'm lucky that in this mindset of just like, I can't believe how lucky we are. Yeah. And maybe that's it, just keeping that alive.
Yeah, I think so. I think you hit the nail on the head with humility. That's something that, as I learned as a kid growing up here as a haole or foreigner, even though, this is the only home I knew. Yeah. Is going into that with humility, because if not, you're going to get smacked. Yeah. Quite literally by an angry auntie that saw your hubris. And so I think you did, and I'm always curious to hear the experience, because it is so nuanced here, more so than any other place I've ever been. And there's so many different sectors of the culture and ideas. And I do think, that message of humility always, when people come to visit, or when you go to visit anywhere, but especially a culture is beautifully sensitive as Hawaii. I say sensitive in a positive way, because Hawaii is sensitive, and I think that is a strength. But it is, you do have to come in with a sense of unknowing, and I think that's good.
Yeah, and like wonder and awe. Like, again, this whole idea of aloha is fantastic. It's exactly what every major religion is teaching, is treat everybody exactly the way you want to be treated, but starting close first, starting with your relatives, moving it outward. You know, that whole thing, letting it inform every decision and your behavior in your life. And again, to me, like, oh, now I get it. Like, people aren't just friendly because they're friendly islanders. No, they're friendly because they've come from a culture of treat people with respect and openness and and that's taught. It's not just like genetic. And to me, that's a fantastically cool thing.
Yeah, it is, and it's a privilege to be treated that way, and it should be taken and spread throughout other parts of the country and the world, and it should not be taken lightly.
You know who doesn't get it though?
Who?
I'm pointing my finger at you. That's rude. That's not a law.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, put that finger away, sir. But you know David Sedaris? Do you know the writer David Sedaris?
No, I don't.
He's big on like NPR. He's like a humorous writer. Mm-hmm. You've probably come across.
I'm sure I've heard.
Yeah.
Listened to a ton of NPR.
Yeah.
So.
This American Life. He does a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was here giving a talk at, was it Blaisdell? Yeah, it was Blaisdell.
Okay.
Massive auditorium. Mm-hmm. And then at the end he takes questions and someone says, Mr. Sedaris, you've been here several times. What's your most favorite, fondest memory or association with Hawaii? And he goes, it's interesting. Every time I've come to Hawaii, someone has been spectacularly rude to me. And I'm like, talk about fucking I'm sorry, can we drop F-bombs in this?
Yeah, I've dropped 2, so go ahead.
Talk about fucking spectacularly rude, dude. Yep. I'm going to dial
this
that
is
one in.
Unfiltered.
I couldn't believe it. And he goes on to tell these stories. And people are like, ha, ha, ha. It's like an NPR-ish kind of crowd,
Yeah.
They're like laughing along with him. He's like, I was in the grocery store and I asked a question and this salesperson was rude and then this person was rude, that person was rude. Like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man, because I've never, ever experienced it in a grocery store on planet Earth, let alone here.
Yeah.
What do you do where you come to, I think, possibly the friendliest state in the country, and somehow your lasting memory is people are spectacularly rude, and secondly, you insult your hosts by saying that?
Yeah. That is super unfortunate. And I think there's the message. You come, and I think a lot of people who come to Hawaii maybe would share the same sentiment. And I think, what's the common denominator? People who come into grocery stores with a hurry up mindset. Things take longer here. It's true. When people say Hawaii time, the line in the grocery store is going to take longer because people are talking story. I know the guy at Foodland that makes my poke bowl, and I've won him over.
Right.
He wasn't so sure about me
Extra
at first.
furikake for you, Cat.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It.
We'll give you a little bit of the fresh,
Uncle,
not the frozen.
please more furikake, and he's like, okay, for you this time. And that's how I knew I got him.
Yeah.
And I think that is, you really get what you put out here. If you put out like that rushed mindset and I need to get it done. And again, I think the theme of this podcast is being present of where you're at, and maybe the theme of your book and the theme of my experience here growing up has been anytime that I've tried to push back, it's push me right down, and I think that's important. That's cool.
My coach and co-author Eric Orton has a phrase. He goes, expectations are the death of possibilities.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking this, then you're missing all of this. Mm-hmm. And again, to me, it's really cool. If you're like focused on like BQing, I'm going to get this boss in time. Okay, you've just lost the possibilities of enjoying the race and where you are. You're doing Grandma's Marathon in Minnesota. Like, this may be your only chance to ever run through the streets of Minnesota. Drink it in.
And also, there's something that I tell my athletes is the only expectation is to show up on at your best on that day. Sometimes that means, just running through the streets. Sometimes your best is having a 10-minute conversation and holding up the line in Foodland, Right. Sometimes your best is winning Western States, and sometimes for me, it's been DFL twice. That was my best on that day, and still I am as proud of those races as I am Western States. And I think that is being present, is being happy with your best, whatever that means.
Right.
Yeah.
Enjoyment. Getting the full enjoyment. And if you're at your best and you're enjoying it, then you're going to run your best. I guess. This is where I need to tap out and say, I don't know what I'm talking about, because I never run competitively. I'm never pushing. So I don't really know what you experience. Like, there's a whole different thing going on. It's alien to me.
Yeah. I think it's just, for me, I love that feeling of being on the brink of what I can do. And it means wildly different things every single time.
Right.
It really does. And every time I've raced, I have raced. Even when I was DFL, believe it or not, I was trying to race and I was trying to push myself.
Oh yeah, we know about you pushing yourself, friend. You're being pulled comatose off a race course in New Zealand.
Oh my God, I know. That was terrible. And like, I've had experiences like that because I love riding that line, which is, that people have said different things about it. I've had doctors be like, and I know you're familiar with this, like, that's terrible. But, it is an experience, and it is like a meditative experience that I like to find just so I can be there sometimes.
That phrase, follow that line, is very evocative. It's like, oh yeah, I get that. Because I don't know if, Carson, you have this with surfers, but with body surfers, they say the same thing, follow the line.
Yeah.
Find the line, follow the line. And that's it. That line is exactly the difference between you riding a wave and eating a ton of shit.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So now you say, like, oh, I get that.
And in running, it's the same. And, if you are present in your body, and I keep telling you what I tell my athletes, but it's important because it's my philosophy as a coach, to learn yourself. Because if you learn yourself, you'll know what that line is. Even if it's a 100-mile race, you'll know, is this sustainable when you're pushing? You should be pushing a little bit if you want to, find that line and finding it and riding it, whether it's in a 100-mile race or a wave or whatever, or cooking. I think that's really, you can do that in cooking. We'll see though.
Clearly someone who does not cook.
Yeah.
But you make it sound really...
All the salt.
Tabasco, what up? But yeah, the way you put it that way, now that sounds really fun. Like, that sounds exciting. Like,
it is exciting. And you can and it's always problem solving. It's always like, oh, I ran a little too hot in that section. I'm going to pull back just a tiny bit where I'm still on the line, but maybe just on the other side of it for a few miles so I can recover and get back on it. But you just brought up body surfing, which I think is a great segue, because now you have a newly budding body surfing career. Who saw that turn coming? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so I'm going into like the deep caves of like psychology about this too, because I had this lasting memory from when I was like 7 or 8 years old. We lived in Philadelphia, and like a big like summer vacation would be to get down to like Rehoboth Beach or Sea Isle City, like the Jersey coast. And I had these 2 older cousins, Ronnie and Johnny, who were like the cool cousins, and they were like 13 and 14, like cool dudes. And I idolized them. And we had these inflatable like mats, and you would like do like mat surfing in little Jersey Shore waves. And I look back on that as like one of like the most exciting moments of my life. I'm like, 2 cool cousins, we're on these mats in the waves, I'm riding them like I didn't die. And you sort of move on with your life. And I keep thinking, am I body surfing now because I was 7 and impressed by my cousins? So like, was this seed planted and now it's like out of my control? I just got to obey it. I don't know. Or maybe it's the best sport for ADHD. Like, this is like custom designed, because when you're out there, there's a million things going on, and you don't have to futz around with a board or nothing. It's just your fins, the water, and then what's going on. And that's what I dig about it. I'm just so enthralled by it. And I've been 3 years of trying to like figure it out. Like, yesterday might have been a breakthrough day.
Oh, really?
We may have a very different conversation in a week where I go, no, that was a mistake. Actually, nothing broke.
I bet you will. That's the thing about water sports and waves is and it's not linear, and it really, I am saying this, I got smacked. I've surfed growing up, and since coming back to Hawaii, I've really sunk my teeth into it. Largely trying to keep up with Carson and his whole family, which are, they're extreme water athletes. And I was surfing on the North Shore, a pretty big day, and it was super stormy, and it was right after the wedding, and I was sick. But I was like so stoked to go out, and I just got smacked down over and over and over again. Big surf, super stormy I kept getting crushed when, I kept going into the wave right when it was peaking, and the wave would break on me, and that's when you just get, and I'm sure but with a board, it's it's terrible. And I've had just this awesome trajectory since, stepping away from it. moving to the mainland. I've gotten better and better, and it's been super fun to progress quickly, and even on my bad days I'm progressing. And since that SmackDown, I haven't been back in the water yet, and largely because of work stuff and being busy,
Right.
but also largely I've had opportunities and I've been like, too big today, and I've never been like that before. So
Feeling that sensation of drowning is horrifying, and even for a second or two.
And the loss of control,
Totally.
really, I think the power of the ocean is really only understood when you're smacked down,
And held down.
And held,
you don't
yeah.
know what's going on. Am I facing up? Am I facing down? What's with all this foam? Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll happen once. I'm done for today. I'm going home. Relax,
Totally.
dude, a bit.
And I've had days like that. Last winter, I had a day where, it was on the brink of what I was comfortable with, but I was progressing so quickly and I was excited. I had this goal, like, I'm going to surf 3 times a week minimum. And it was big and it was super stormy, and I got pulled out. I ended up getting in trouble a little bit, but I managed to paddle in, and I managed to get, I caught a wave, but I also got sucked out, stuck on the rocks, but I still made it. And I felt that feeling of accomplishment. And in this case, I felt, because I was in this, the other day when I just got smacked down and tossed around, that day I felt like I was humbled, that where the other day I was like, I had a rough day and I made it out there. This day I was like, I was held under more than once.
The ocean's like, something we didn't teach you last week.
I
This
know,
week we're gonna make sure the
exactly.
message
It was
gets
like,
through.
it was like you were too confident still after getting smacked.
Yeah. Let's take it up a level.
Exactly. So I'm just so interested in, you are obviously really introspective and really thoughtful, and the ocean is something that's deeply cultural and spiritual and a great teacher of Hawaii. And what has the ocean taught you as someone who's just getting into this sport?
So that's what's so cool about it. So that's what I want to do next. I'm sort of put my brain into this for like the next 2 years and just learn while doing it. But I think that what I feel when I'm out there all the time is that sense of like massive, like glorious power. Like you're at Makapu'u, the water is crystal clear. I can look down, I can see 15 feet down, see sand. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. But at the same time, it could smack me on those rocks, suck me out to sea. I'll be gone in a heartbeat, swallow me up, never to be seen. And which has happened out there, in the past year,
Oh, yeah.
And I think what I love about it is, to me, what sport is all about is stripping away all the pretensions of who we are, what we think we are, our power, our money, our stature, our fucking car, all that stuff. We're in the water. Ocean doesn't give a shit. Doesn't care what your name is. Doesn't care how much money you have in the bank. It's going to treat you the same as the other guy. And that's what I love about it, And when and you're out there too. What I love too about body surfing is that it's invisible. All you see is like jaw line up. So I don't know if the guy next to me is my age or older or fatter or male or female. It's just a head,
Yeah.
And what I love is you go to Point Panic and you'll see these like Titanic, like 15-foot Hawaiian waves coming in and some guy's rocking it like a dolphin. And he gets out, oh, it's like a 70-year-old fat dude. But in the water, he's like God.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it comes down to. Is to me, it's this great, beautiful equalizer, which I feel like was the spirit of Born to Run, and that's what here's running with Sherman, is that if we get away with all the junk, the donkey does not give a shit what your name is, what kind of car you drive. Donkey doesn't care, Resistance fighters, World War II, didn't matter what your job was. What can you do in the mountains?
Yeah.
And that's what I dig. That's what I'm finding with the ocean is even more than any other sport, it strips you down literally to skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm finding a theme there because I realized when you were talking about that with surfing, you can very clearly tell who's good and who's not, and you can tell very distant, like you can look at, and I love that. I'm like, oh, wow. I saw this lady surfing the other day when I was watching Carson surf because I was still scared. And I was like, wow, that is the most technical surfer I've ever seen. I was so impressed with her. I literally went up and talked to her after. I was like, I love you. Oh, I didn't say that, but I do. And, but with body surfing, you know, on the same break, I was watching a ton of body surfers, and you can't tell their skill level. And I think it takes that performative aspect out of it that, you know, that can take the joy out of something.
Well, you can start to see it, you know, that if you spend time doing it. And
when you're in the water, but you're not performing for anyone on the beach, you know?
Yeah. You don't know. You don't have time to wonder. And again, you're not sitting on a board. No one sees an expensive board or a nice swimsuit or a toned body. They don't see any of it. It's a great equalizer. We're all invisible under the water. And then when a wave comes in, it's kind of like, you can't orchestrate who's going to get it. Like I've been in point panic where I've gone out there. I'm just going to stay out here in the corner. You know, I'm just going to stay out of the way. But if I happen to be where the wave is breaking, everyone will kind of scram around. They go, "Dude, you brother, you go." Like, all right, I didn't intend to.
Yeah.
But again, what's cool about the ocean delivers to whoever the person is, whether they're deserving or not. If you're in the right spot, it's your wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I dig it. I like that, and I think that's the thing about it. I feel like, so here's one of my real beefs with endurance sports is about the toughness.
Yeah, me too.
Gotta be tough. You too?
Oh yeah.
But you know, you got to live it though. How do you deal with it? You who ran yourself into a coma.
Yeah, well, I also practice, you know, being present. I mean, when people don't believe me, but like I follow a training plan. I love it, but like my adventure days and my easy days, I'm truly present, and it's not always about being tough. It's about being intentional. Yeah. And like sometimes and often like just being intentional is, again, just being present and in that. But I agree. Like I hate the mentality that has spread of like always going. You got to be hard. You got to be, and that's not the case. You know, you got to know yourself. What do you want to do? I ride the line because that's what I love to do.
Right.
But my sister really loves academics, you know, and she runs, and the way that she's found running to be enjoyable is to just be present.
Yeah.
You know, and I think like that is what you should focus on, is like what is it to you? And like when I'm on my easy days, I take that seriously, and I'm not always trying to be tough. And there are days where I'm like, today I want to be here. I want to push through this, and today I am going to be tough. And there are days too where I'm like, this is not fun today. Right. This is not something that I want to do, and so I'm not going to do it. And I do that, you know. And there's some days where I face that, and I'm like, I don't really want to be tough, but I know today I need to face that. Yeah. I need to do this hard thing because I'm at this point. So I think, but being hard all the time, being tough all the time is not the answer to anything healthy. Yeah. You know, it means that you're not facing some other shit that's going on.
I would guess. Yeah. And it's about pushing through toughness for toughness' own sake, not toughness for, hey, let me see if I can do this.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to and then I'm going to look down on myself if I didn't, you know, that's the other thing too, the self-doubt and the self-criticism people get because they didn't push as hard, and they didn't lose their toenails, and they weren't bleeding.
And that's the thing, like, you know, you shouldn't be upset at yourself if you didn't kill yourself. And I've faced, as someone who cares a lot about doing my best, I've faced mourning in a race that I wanted to go a certain way, because I've worked hard and because I love that process. I love that process of working hard towards something. But I don't like feel those feelings and then bulldoze through them and with like pure toughness. I'm like, you know, I process them, and I think that's where that toughness mentality comes out of. You know, I really, this has been such a cool conversation because there's been a lot of themes, and so I'm curious where this is going to take us. But you are such a creative guy, and that's only been more apparent as we've chatted over this hour plus.
Thank you.
And and it's really cool. And I think everyone has a degree of creativity. It's just maybe not nurtured. And so I want to ask what your creative process is like, and how do you stay in touch with that creative side?
So I was listening to a podcast, a Michael Lewis podcast, and he was talking about how men and women do differently on standardized tests. And often women will score worse on standardized tests. And the reason why, when they actually do tests, is it's not because they don't know the stuff. They are less willing to guess. And, we live in a man-forward... Oh, and the genesis of this is that it has to do basically with mansplaining. And that, here I am actually doing it. And there are all kinds of examples of, like, men are willing to offer themselves as experts. And there's, like, one part where a guy had a heart attack on a plane, and a woman who was an army surgeon stood up and goes, "Oh, I'm a doctor." And some guy stepped in front of her and goes, "Oh, I work in a hospital. I'm in the medical field." Pushed her aside, and the flight attendant's like, "Oh, okay, let him do it." And she's like, "I'm a combat surgeon." I'm the luckiest thing that ever happened to this guy having a heart attack until you stepped in my way.
Yeah. So
the reason I'm thinking about this is you asked a question, I'm not exactly answering it, but in a way I think I am, is that, I was raised by parents who were kind of go for it parents. Fake it till you make it, do whatever, just go for it. And that's the kind of thing where I feel like I've always overpromised and tried to deliver. I've always, applied for jobs that I have no qualifications for. And so when we talk about creativity, I think creativity is a product of one thing and one thing only. It's confidence. It's just confidence. Like, everyone has the idea. The question is who's going to say it. When I was saying that stuff about, wouldn't it be funny if the New Testament had a really cranky Jesus?
Yeah.
It's a problematic thing. A lot of people might be pissed off and offended by that. I deliberately wear trans pride stuff all the fucking time because Tulsi Gabbard's my neighbor.
Yeah.
And it's making my head explode. And I want her to see this every time she sees me. So, but that's a product of being a gigantic white dude in America. It comes pre-installed with a lot of benefits. And so I think for me, I've been lucky to have creative stuff going on because the margin for error is bigger. I can fuck up and not fall that far because I'm like a giant white dude in America. So that's it. Basically, a lot of it comes from the fact that I was raised with the kind of confidence where I can explore an idea, say things, see how they go. And so if there's an extractable lesson for anybody is realizing that self-consciousness is such a waste of thought. No one really cares, Don't be afraid to say something because of what somebody else. What do you care what's in somebody else's brain?
Yeah.
You don't even know what the hell they're worrying about. So that's it to me. So I have 2 daughters, and like that is like my mantra. Is like just go for it, man. Say what you want. Think what you want. You will never. I told them in school, talking about punch. I said you will never get into trouble from me ever from getting in a fight at school ever. I don't care what the circumstances are.
Yeah.
You get in a fight. Free pass. Not that I'm condoning violence, but if you're sticking up for yourself, if you're standing your way, if you're pulling a Cat Bradley and bashing a kid into the locker. So I think that's the thing is if people have that confidence to realize that the fall to the ground is not as far as you think it is. Body surf is a perfect example. When you realize I'm not going to get slaughtered, I might as well go for it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
that was a weird answer to your question.
No, I think that's pretty amazing. And so, for someone who, the consequence is a little higher, what advice would you give them to protect themselves? A lot of people, they want to nurture this creative side, but they're, first they were taught not to because this is the only way they're going to succeed is to work this job. And it's a lot like running. When you're a kid, running's easy. You're running on the playground all day. And then when you're working this job and it becomes low on the totem pole, all of a sudden you're not running anymore. What would you tell someone that's who's frustrated with their lives and they want to nurture that side of themselves but are afraid of the risk? What would you tell them?
Well, 2 things. Like right now, you're going to face surgery. You're not going to be running for 3 weeks. It's like all of a sudden the thing that you're dope at is being taken away from you. That. And you never know. Our time on the planet, it's like, here's another thing. So you're not my age. When you're my age and you look back at pictures of yourself in your 20s, you're like, whoa, what a friggin' stud. You know? But when you're in your 20s, you're insecure and this, I don't think, I get this wrong in my hair. But you look back on that, like, dude, that opportunity when you were just a stud just came and went, And so wherever I'm feeling now, 10 years from now, I'll be looking back at my 61-year-old self, like, dude, you were a rocket,
Mm-hmm.
So your opportunity to enjoy it is so fleeting. It's fast. It's going to be gone before you know it.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah.
Like, the real risk is not that you're going to try and fail now. The risk is that 10 years from now, you're like, oh, shit, man, I was in my prime. Like,
Yeah.
that is the thing. And I think the second thing is, I think about everything as akin to learning an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to go out and like rock Madison Square Garden, you'll probably never be good.
Yeah.
But if you find the thing, the creative act that you actually enjoy, not for what it will get you, but like if you sit down, like, hey, I kind of dig trying to write a poem. It's like it's hard, but I lose myself. If I'm doing a crossword puzzle, I lose myself.
Yeah.
If you're on the water, I got out of the water yesterday because I realized, oh my God, I'm like turning into sizzling. I am turning into a piece of bacon out here because I was frying. It was 2.5 hours in the water. But if you lose sense of time in that creative act, then that's the thing to do it. And then nothing else matters,
Yeah.
And forget about whether people are going to like it, whether you're going to make money at it, whether it's a job. If you find the thing that makes you forget that you're hungry, then just do that thing.
Mm-hmm. I think they call that flow state.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think where people get misdirected is feeling, oh, the thing I should be creative at is this, because I could become
this
a blogger, or I could become a writer, or I could become a musician. But it doesn't mean you necessarily enjoy it.
Yeah. And so I feel like, for you, whether that's writing or body surfing or running, there's times, even though you lose yourself, I'm sure there's some times where you don't. No one's perfect, and I'm sure sometimes you feel like you're bashing your head against the wall. I know I am a writer. That's what I've always loved to do. Writing and running are the two things that have always been a constant in my life. But, sometimes, especially writing, and, well, I guess running too, is a lot harder for me than it is other times. How do you, facilitate that flow state, even though, you found the thing that you can get lost in, but sometimes it's just not clicking? How do you either make it click, or how do you just go through it even when it's not?
So I hate the writing part of writing. I love everything else. Like, I love going out, talking to people, seeing stuff, experiencing stuff. And then it's like, oh shit, now I gotta sit down and actually write. It's like, oh my,
That's refreshing.
sense of dread. Like, oh my God. And so the first big lesson, well, let me sort of back up. So my writing history was starting off as an Associated Press correspondent. And so, writing, news blurbs for the Associated Press Wire. So your longest story was like maybe 500 words. Your longest story is like 6 paragraphs. No matter what it was, there would be a bomb attack in downtown Lisbon. I got 6 or 7 paragraphs, which is perfect because 6 paragraphs, I'm out. Now I'm covering soccer. Now I'm covering the local currency. Now I'm covering a crime drama. So for limited attention span, it was fantastic because I'm in and out of a story in 90 minutes, and then I'm on to the next thing. But that's how I kind of learned my bones of like here's how you put a story together. Here's what you need. And a 500-word story is its own kind of haiku art form. You got to have beginning, middle, and end. You got to get all the details. A lot of like little pieces that got to click together. So you learn that. And then I went into magazine journalism, which was 2,000 words. But then when I shifted from 2,000 to 3,000 words to a book, which is 100,000 words, that's a very distant shore you got to paddle to. And the first mistake I made when I started working on Born to Run was saying, okay, I'm going to do what writers do. I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning and I have a mug of coffee and I'm going to write all day and 12 hours of writing. And I'm just going to be very thorough and consistent. That lasted for a week. And I'm just getting shit done. I'm not doing anything because I couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
And I was just running around like a nut. And then I realized, man, you know what? Embrace it. You cannot sit still when the sun is visible. It's like, and this, if I'd known this in grade school, I would have stayed out of detention for at least 3 years because I can't sit still when the sun's up. As soon as the sun goes down, I'm just like chill and relax. And so on our farm in Pennsylvania, That's what I did. I got up at 5 in the morning, helped the kids get off to school, fed the animals, bucked hay, fixed fence posts, cut firewood. I just spent the whole day draining the tank, like just exhausting myself. And then we'd have dinner at night around 6 o'clock, and then at 7:30 I'd go out to my office, and from like 8 o'clock to 1 in the morning, totally relaxed. And I could get 10 times as much done at the end of the day after dark than I could during the day. So I just surrendered. Like, this is my thing. Don't try to make myself into what I'm not. Find what works for you and surge hard on that.
Yeah, that's so smart to like find your thing. That's like something that I am doing for myself. I know I'm most creative and most productive in the morning, first thing in the morning. So I have to, there's certain things that I just have to do right when I wake up. Because I love running in the morning too, but there's other, it's always this compromise,
Yeah.
But I am flabbergasted at the lack of sleep that you had for many years during Born to Run, it sounds like.
That was nuts, man. Yeah, that was nuts. I look back, it's funny. So after that book, so I built this cool little cabin behind the house, and like that was my own workspace. I would never go back to it again. It was like traumatizing.
Yeah.
Because it was, I don't know if you noticed, but I turned in a draft, and my editor's like, I think you better just start over. Like, trash 80,000 words, start over. And he was right. I completely fucked it up.
Oh, my God.
But imagine that, a year of work, toss it, start over. And now you're running out of money because the advance they paid you was only supposed to last for a year. Now the year's over. You don't get paid till you turn a draft in. You're starting over. So money's running out. You're depressed and then back at it again.
That's brutal.
But from that point on, I can only, for some reason I found that I write on a table like this size facing the kitchen. It's like a weird compulsion. And I only noticed it recently because when my daughter was finishing high school in Pennsylvania, my wife and I took turns staying with her in Pennsylvania. So I would fly back for 3 months and then we'd swap. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking around his house. It's got bedrooms, it's got desks here and there. Like, oh, here's this kind of card table. I think I'll just put it here. And then I was looking at a picture, like, it's a card table facing the kitchen. Like, at our home in Pennsylvania, it was the same thing. Our house here, we had a little round table facing the kitchen. Like, somehow instinctively, like a nesting bird.
Yeah.
I can only write. And I think it was a result of, like, just trashing my trauma psychology when I was locked up in that cabin for 2 years.
Yeah.
Thinking it's not going to work. Feeling like, oh, shit, like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Clearly I don't because I just blew a draft. What makes you think it's going to be better this time?
That's so crazy. And honestly, I'm sure we'll give a lot of people hope, because I don't know. I'm at a point where in some parts of my career, I'm like, why am I still trying? And then I hear something like that and it's like, oh, it's worth it. It doesn't always surface and it might not manifest in the way you think, but.
Yeah. But the breakthrough for me was understanding what exactly are you trying to do? And why I blew the first draft was because I was trying to impress people. Like, I want this thing to be like, with a magazine story, you want to smack them in the face in the first paragraph, get their attention, you hold their attention, and you, because it's short enough, you can engineer the timeline so you can put your craziest stuff first, and there's not that much to explain afterwards. You can't do that in a book. So the mistake I made in the first draft was trying to like be a blockbuster, and the second one, like, wait, what story are you trying to tell?
Yeah. Forget
what people are expecting. Decide what it is that you're actually trying to say, and then do that. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe if it applies to people's lives, like if you can take that breath and wait, what am I trying to do in my life? Mm-hmm. Why am I running? Why am I doing it because I want to lose weight? Well, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah, it is.
If you can reconfigure that, why am I arguing with my spouse?
Yeah.
Are we going to remember this argument next week? Fucking no.
Yeah.
So why am I causing this person to feel pain? Things like that.
Totally. And why are you? I just had this conversation like with someone that's close to me, like several. No, not that one. Luckily, not that one. 2 weeks into marriage.
I would never believe it. By the way, you would have trouble. There's something about Carson that is so like. I told you the second I met him, for 30 seconds, I sent you an email, like text, like this is like a loving, glowing guy. Like I love the energy off of him. You could almost never come to me in 5 years ago. Oh, Carson did this. I go, Sorry,
I know
Kat.
he'd be like, Kat, what did you do?
What did you do?
Honestly, it's true. He is,
Right.
he's
Yeah,
so...
yeah. It's dangerous power the man has.
It is. It's a dangerous power, but he, I know he won't do anything with it,
But I cut you off though. You were saying you had this conversation or this
Oh,
situation
yeah,
with somebody?
that's right. Kudos to Carson. But I was saying I was having this conversation, and he was like, I'm just not going to say sorry. I don't think it warranted a sorry. And I was like, but why? Was it worth that giant fight? Why? Like, what's wrong with saying sorry? And grumble, and I think that's the message, like, the taking a step back, if you took a step back and be like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's really not a big deal. And sometimes taking that deep breath is, whatever it is like, it makes everything so clear. And it's like, is this worth it? Or what am I trying to accomplish? What am I really feeling here that's making me react like this? And what is the other person feeling? Or what is my purpose in this? What, as you said, what am I hoping to really accomplish?
I have a good friend, Don Sull, and he's a really combative dude through college, like all kinds of like fights and stuff. And I've seen him now. He's Mr. Chill, great dad, great husband, great dude. And he was telling me about an argument he was having with a colleague. And he goes, I was just trying to get her to understand one thing. He goes, just lead with a question. Don't assume that I'm the villain. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But ask. And he said that to me, like, it just locked in my head. Like, in an argument, you're almost never asking questions because you're pretty damn sure,
Right.
what's going on. And so we use that word sorry, or I have to apologize, or you have to apologize. Well,
Yeah.
who gives a shit about that?
Exactly.
What if you said, hey, I don't want to have a bad feeling with you. What's going on? I don't get it, If you just ask the question, well, I think, okay, that's what you thought. I don't see it that way. If it comes into a conversation as opposed to, but I get it. Nobody wants to feel like they're cornered into a position of humbleness, or retreat. But you don't have to. Instead of saying you're sorry, again, what do you want to accomplish, I want this person to be my friend. I think they're a fucking asshole for like not wiping their feet, or finishing the last beer. But hey, dudes, I don't want to be angry. Why do you always finish the last beer?
Totally, and that's ultimately what this conversation led to. Because I was like, why?
Right.
Why don't you want to? And it led to something as what you were saying. That he just wanted to accomplish something that he felt wasn't being appreciated. And,
yeah.
But anyway, I segue. You're clearly a high achieving person and you're clearly very wise. I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot about myself and how I'm going to...
You're going to get some hate mail for that one.
I get that anyway, so I've gotten...
Chris McDougall, relationship counselor at your own risk.
I'm sure I will, and I've gotten hate mail every time, no matter what I say.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's
For
just
who?
the internet, just from people on the internet, I've had people tell me it all kinds of stuff, tell me I shouldn't be in Hawaii. I've had death threats for me being here before, which is pretty scary. That happened during the pandemic where things were like super charged, and I still get it every once in a while, like a how dare you type of message or comment. I had someone who I'm pretty sure was just like a fake account, because it was always just like a photo of a running shoe, and then the account would be deleted when I like 2 weeks later, and it was comments, saying that I was washed up and that I was a mental case. And
I feel you are very washed up. You smell clean. Shampoos. I think you do a very nice job of washing up.
Thank you very much. It is
hygienic is your strength. But think about the effort to create a fake account, to say something shitty, and then delete. Like
exactly
a portion of your day, you could be eating a Three Musketeers candy bar.
I know.
Instead, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and make somebody else feel bad. There's 45 minutes of your precious lifespan on Earth, my friend. You could have been hit by a car in the 46th minute, and you chose the last 45 minutes of your planet. I'm just going to fuck with somebody I've never met.
Exactly. And it's happened, it's been a common reoccurrence in the last 5 years. And I've just been like, that's okay. Sometimes it's gotten to me, and but I think ultimately, as someone who struggles with using Instagram in general, it takes me twice as long as it takes the next person. I see that. I see like that is. I feel for that guy, and I hope.
But you too. I mean, do you feel it's more because you're a woman?
I probably, it probably is more because I'm a woman. In talking with my peers, I feel like it's there's greater instances for female influencers or athletes or community members.
I was talking about that with Lucy Bartholomew, and the shit that she's received. I'm like, made my eyeballs roll in my head, and like, no dude would ever get comments like that.
I know, and it's really upsetting, and and it's everything from like body criticisms to lifestyle criticisms to
training choices. You should be doing this.
Yeah,
Set
and
the
that's
amateur
like
to the professional athlete.
That's literally the most mild of them. I get those all day long, and I just let them roll off me. But some of them like do cut, especially the ones totally honest. Pertaining to my presence in Hawaii, because it's something that I felt self-conscious of since I was a kid.
Is it Hawaiians that are saying these things?
No, it's never Hawaiians.
So people from the mainland are saying that you shouldn't be here? People
from the mainland, people from other, people from indigenous communities on the mainland have said that before too, and it is, but something that I have just being aware of as a kid, and that's super, as a Haole kid growing up in Hawaii, you're super aware of.
Right.
And I was a really sensitive, I've always been a sensitive person. I felt that, I knew that there was anger and resentment, and understandably so. So those are really the only ones that bother me these days. I got like a email submission on my website the other day telling me that I was a washed up athlete and that I should stop trying. And those I'm like, but those are the only ones. I know it's just like a consequence.
What is wrong? What is wrong with this planet?
Yeah. And it's wild that you don't share that experience. I think I'm just like sometimes an optimist. I'm like, everyone on the internet receives that, but you're a more famous than I am by quite a bit, and
I'm largely ignored.
That's
online.
Amazing.
It's weird. Like I'll put something online, there'll be 0 comments. I think probably is because I go dormant, man. I go larval for like 5 years at a time. If I'm not trying to sell something, I'm gone, and Instagram is actually a brand new thing. I think I started Instagram. And if you look at like my early Instagram posts, like, oh, the cat, the goat, Sherman, the donkey. It was animal pictures. It was like a family album. And to this day, I'm still kind of crappy at it. And I also just kind of don't engage very much. I'm bad at it because the thing you're supposed to be really doing is offering communication with you. And I'm kind of not like, here's my picture, I'm out,
Yeah, I'm kind of like that too.
Yeah. But and so for whatever reason, I also don't think people associate my name with the books. I think that the books exist. I think a lot of people don't know who wrote Born to Run. If you like the book, they don't know that I wrote it.
Wow.
Because I'll bump into people and like, oh, they'll recommend Running with Sherman to me. Like, oh yeah, you wrote Born to Run. There's another book about running with a donkey called Running with Sherman. Like,
you're like, cool.
Tell me more. Is it good? Where can one buy lots of copies? So yeah, I think that's the thing about it. Maybe I'm also protected because your presence, your person is what you do. Whereas the book for me lives independently of me.
Yeah, and
the book, don't track it back to this guy.
And you are, I say character lightly because I know personally every single one in the person in the book of Born to Run, but you do, it is a first person book. You speak about yourself and your experience, and so that's so fascinating to me. And maybe it's just because you put some of the other people involved in the book on such a high pedestal. You did such a good job of putting these people on this pedestal of like amazing athlete or amazing photographer in Lewis's case, or like even the the wild romantic characters of Billy and Jen. And I don't actually know Billy's wild side, but I do know Jen's wild side.
So, the one person who's a little bit disgruntled, well, Caballo was disgruntled, but of course he was born disgruntled, pissy in diapers. Jen was a little bit miffed.
Yeah, I know.
But I've been around her where she's like, give me shit. She's like, man, you said this. And then people are like, dude, he was nice to you. Like I could have gone like a whole second volume of like Jen's arrest record. So she's cool. Listen, here's the thing about writing a book is nobody asked you to do it. Scott did not invite me into his life to tell his life story.
Yeah.
And so I'm super grateful, that Jen and Billy, everybody shared their experience in their life with me, and I was able to tell that story. So they gave their stories to me. And so if they're unhappy about it, I get it totally. I have got no right to these stories. It's a gift. I get it. That said, I look back on it now, and again, I still see everybody all the time, and I look back and I feel pretty satisfied. Like I think I hit the nail on the head. Like, I think that's a good accurate depiction of Jen. I feel like I got Ted in a way that I almost blew because I disliked him so violently. He bothered me so much that it was only the fact that Lewis and Jen and Billy liked him so much that I thought, wait, maybe I'm missing something here. Let me revisit this dude. That's the one guy I almost fucked up. I almost portrayed him wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I know Ted, and I wouldn't say wrong. I would just say it was mild. Ted is maybe the most eccentric guy I've ever met, and I've stayed with him. I was like, he flew me out for the Luna Sandals.
You guys dated for a few years, right?
No. Shut up.
I am starting that rumor.
Do not spread that rumor because he will lean into it.
He will lean into it as performance art.
Exactly.
He'll be so amused by it.
He'll be so amused.
Yeah, you'll be Barefoot Cat will be an Instagram thing, and yeah. I'm sorry.
Man.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Shoot.
How'd you end up staying with Ted? Oh, it was Luna Sandals. You're up in.
Well, no, I was in Santa Barbara, and his factory, the Luna Sandals factory, the grand opening was about to happen.
Yeah.
And he came to Lewis's house, and I was, a track athlete, and he was like, just come and run around, help out. And I ended up there for like 3 weeks, sleeping either on his floor or the floor of the Luna Sandals factory with all kinds of people coming in and out. I had just run my first 100-miler Bryce 100, and I had the Bryce 100 bib, and I put that bib on and ran the Rock and Roll Seattle Marathon every step with Maria Walton, who's a mutual friend of ours, or Micah True's girlfriend. And it was a blast. It was such a fun time. And since getting to know him, I've been, since winning Western States, he's been like, Kat, you should do this. Kat, you should do that. And I pick and choose.
Right. What are you going to listen to? I'll say one thing about Ted. He has hosted so many of my friends. I've forgotten. Like,
totally.
I got some Amish buddies back in Lancaster who were traveling by car to a Ragnar up in Seattle. And Ted was living up there then, and they stayed in the factory. I completely forgot about it. This was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's been repeated. Like my friend Julie Angel stayed, everybody. These guys never said no. Not only never said no, but shows up like a friggin' 3-ring circus.
Oh my gosh.
If you ask him to show up with some sandals, but free sandals for everybody, And
free sandals, showing up. He took us around the city. I'd never been to Seattle. Anytime I see him, he welcomes me I'm like his warmest best friend, and that's pretty special. And I think, Ted sometimes can be known for, and when you meet him, the impression is overconfidence. But I think that ability to just let everybody in, I think that is another way of practicing humility, because everyone is a person that you want to get to know in Ted's eyes, and that's pretty amazing.
So when I sent him, the 2 first early copies of Born to Run I sent out in the galley, unprinted galley. One was to Caballo, one was to Ted. So I thought, if anybody's going to be pissed, it's going to be
Those
these guys.
two.
I'm just going to take it on the chin. Here it is. Read it. What do you think? Goodbye. Grouchy. He's fine with grouchy. Ted goes online. He had like a blog back then. He goes, this is the PhD thesis I no longer have to write. He was so proud of it and so happy. And I'm like, man, dude, that is, I don't want to overstate things, but, that was such a pure heart. Like,
Yeah.
he got it. Like, who gives a shit if you're making fun of me? I don't care.
Yeah.
It's fun,
You do make fun of Ted, but it's in an endearing way. So I had no idea that you had that experience and you didn't like him. I can tell, obviously, like everyone can, that he's a character, and that he makes a strong impression. And but that, as you said, he sees the good in it and the message, and that's pretty cool.
He's personally inconvenient to me. I'm there to report a story.
Yeah.
I'm sitting knee to knee with Scott Jordan. Again, I'm very new to this world, and this is showing up at a swim tournament. Oh, there's Michael Phelps. Like, I don't know much about swimming, but I'm sure Michael Phelps can tell me. And so, but every time I would try to talk to Scott, Ted was in the way. Trying to talk to Ted, Ted's there. We thought he was going to drive Caballero away. There wasn't even going to be a race. So for me, this guy was just like poison. He was going to blow the whole thing up.
But it sounds about right. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
So, you obviously are, again, like a super high achieving person, and you attract a lot of high achieving, unique people. And, that takes a certain oomph, and it's something that I think maybe everyone has in them, but culturally is kind of, we're taught to, assimilate, to be the same. And I think, for all excellent people, there's something that either works a little bit differently in their brain, or something that they really embrace, that they know works differently, and they ride that wave. And what is it in you that makes you just a little bit different for you to be this standout author and to have had these incredible experiences?
I love everything you're saying, by the way. It's like the most praise I've ever gotten in my life.
Wow, that's...
Yeah. Thank you. I think it was getting back to that idea at the beginning about the beginner's mentality. I think what I like is curiosity.
Yeah.
I really like to find stuff out. And I've just kind of, again, sort of leaned into that. And if I find someone that knows stuff I don't know, I genuinely want to hear the story. And I'm really enchanted by stories. Like, I like people telling cool stories.
Mm-hmm.
So if I meet a Ted or I meet a Scott Jork, I just got a million questions. And I really want to see things through their eyes. So, for me, I think it was a nice combination of natural interest. I like hearing stories. I like reading books, and curiosity. And then being able to take those things and then turn it into something else. A story I heard, something else I heard, turn it into something fresh and new. I like it. And I think that's maybe it, is if you come into things with the mindset, or here's probably what it is. It's more, I think I seek out situations where I don't know what I'm doing. So think about my career. I got a job with the Associated Press as a news reporter in a country I'd never been to before, in a language I didn't speak. And I was soon to be covering a war. I'd never been in a conflict area before. I was so out of my depth in every way. And then from Portugal to Africa, where, again, I didn't know the continent, and then Rwanda, and then worked in Spain. So it was constantly like, as soon as I got comfortable, I made myself uncomfortable.
Yep.
And got myself into a foreign environment. As soon as I got good at news writing, I quit and started doing magazine work where I didn't know anybody, didn't have that whole network, didn't know how to do magazine stories. Jumped into books where I sucked at it, clearly, because I had to rip up a manuscript. So maybe that was it too. Mm-hmm. The exhilaration of feeling like you're out of your depth. Right now with body surfing, like, I go out there, I know I am the worst guy in the water, and like, I'm just watching, like, what are these guys doing? Like, how are they figuring it out? I was telling somebody, it's like standing on the roof of a building and looking down and going, if I jump, I'm going to fall and hit the ground. And then the other guy jumps off, but somehow he slides down the building. Mm-hmm. But then you jump off, I'll do that, and you still hit the fucking ground. Like,
yeah.
What did he do? But I kind of dig it. Like, well, I'm going to go back and try it again until I figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I really resonate with that too. Like the curiosity is, I think, has been my biggest strength.
I mean, it sounds like that with trail running. Like you got yourself out of track, into trails, into ultras, into hundreds. New places, new trails.
Yeah.
And you like you say, like for you, the sport's ever fresh because it's never the same trail, the same circumstances, the same conditions twice in a row.
Exactly. And also it's never, it's when you're running that long, you can't predict what your body's going to do on that day, and that is, wildly, it's an adventure every time, you're going through an adventure in your own body, even if you're running the same course on it, the same day, on the same weather and the same conditions. Like your body changes depending on like what you're doing and where you're at and like what you experience, and that in itself is an adventure.
So crazy to think at mile 30 you've got to project what you're gonna be feeling at mile 90.
Yeah, but if you're doing it right, you're not thinking about mile 90 at mile 30.
I know. Still.
Yeah, you're thinking about mile 31.
Yeah, right. But still, part of your brain is it's also short term, but it's got to be kind of long term focused because you can't be blasting through the 10-foot,
totally
post holes.
You're so right.
Yeah.
I think the key is understanding how far you have to go still, while knowing that the moment you're in, I think that is key.
What's your strength? Are you a heat person? Do you like
heat for sure?
You got
give me Western States, baby.
Yeah.
Give me those conditions. It was
better.
the hottest year that they'd ever had. The year I won, and everyone was dying in the heat, and I was like, "What heat?
So
that's
just
fine."
Ride through those pre-dawn hours when it's freezing. Like I'm just gonna ride through this until.
Yeah, the cold is really difficult for me.
Right,
yeah,
right.
I ran UTMB, and I had a decent race. I was in the top 10, but it was so cold that my bottles were freezing, like on my body. And I think part of that is why I had such a hard time. I had my body was rejecting all kinds of stuff, and some people get that in the heat. I get that in the cold, and so with mountain races, it's always a crapshoot.
So why do you guys kill it? You guys, meaning women, kill it at UTMB, and the dudes just flame out?
I think ego.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, a course like Western States is so fast and predictable, and the mountain, and, you can't go into the mountains in Chamonix with a conquering mindset. You're just going to get smacked.
Right.
I think women understand that, and are a little bit more patient in general, and again, this is a total generalization, but I think it's a lot easier for women to put that ego aside for the first 75 miles.
Think about that. I'm going to have to sleep through the first 75 miles.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And
take it easy for the first 3 marathons.
Yeah. The race, at Western States, that saying that the race starts at Forest Hill is true.
Yeah.
It's getting to Forest Hill in contention. Still, you're running fast, but you're not racing. And then if you can get there in one piece, at Forest Hill, you can let it rip. It's fast running from there. So you just got to hold on. At UTMB, you just got to hold on till Champe Lac, which is around mile 70, and then you let it rip.
Yeah. But I've heard it's really hard to do that, though. I was crewing for a buddy who dropped at mile 60, and he said the descents are just so much harder than he ever expected.
At Western?
No, at
UTMB.
UTMB, yeah.
They're steep. They're really steep.
Yeah.
I think I think that's the other thing is there's this whole study that I read a couple years ago that when you predict something to be really, really difficult, your perceived effort goes down. And when you predict something like, oh, it's not so bad, then your perceived effort goes up. And for UTMB, people talk about how buffed out that trail is because it's not TDS. It's not the super technical one that's steep. That's like 40% grade, but you still have to, you're still descending 4,000 feet every single descent. And I think going into every race with that mindset of this is going to be hard probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
No matter how many hundreds you've done, it's like this one might be the hardest I've ever done. Going into it with that mindset really protects you from being like, man, those downhills, that's why I couldn't do it, But yeah, I that would be my advice to your friend.
Yeah.
So we got to wrap up here pretty soon. This has been just such an awesome. We could talk forever.
I give long answers. I
love that. I give
that.
long answers too. I've had that criticism to me, as a podcast host and guest. So you and I are the perfect storm for a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah.
But this is something that I ask all of my guests. What is something that you're very proud of that people wouldn't know, that you haven't talked about on other podcasts or other interviews?
Oh, well, this might end up being false pride, but I used to be a really angry, argumentative, kind of explosively semi-violent kind of dude, and quick to anger, super stubborn. So I may still be, but this is my own perception. Like, I feel like I turned that around. Like, when you guys offered me beer when I came in, I've learned, you know what? Beer makes me mouthy, makes me obnoxious, makes me rude, and I don't want to be that guy. So I think personally what I really like is that I stopped being a lot of that way. Yeah.
That's huge. That's a huge accomplishment. I got to say, as someone who, there's always family members and people in your life that are explosive, and it seems sometimes like like a wall that you have to get through to them. Like, hey, like, why'd you do that? And it's hard to change that. So it's huge.
When you're raised in a culture where everyone's that way, which I was.
Yeah.
Well, there's an argument. Well, everyone fights. Like, you yell. Like, volume equals being correct. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was kind of raised in. This kind of Sicilian Irish Catholic family. Everyone's arguing, yelling, never backing down. And it took like sort of stepping away from that and being around other people to look back and like, that's kind of crazy,
Yeah.
But then sort of rooting it out of your own behavior and, not doing it. So
yeah,
I'll be very curious if like my wife and kids see this and go, dude, you're not quite as good as you think you are.
But, I
room
think
to improve.
Probably better than, if you can see that improvement, that's better. And that's huge because that's a really hard thing to improve. And that takes looking in the mirror. And that's the hardest thing to do is like look in the mirror. That's the thing that I got to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then reminding yourself that you're with these people because you love them. Why?
Yeah.
You don't have to inflict yourself on. You want them. You always want to be the guy. I forget who this was, but I remember one time a guy showed up and was like, hey, oh, I know who it is. It's my friend Jay. So I play basketball over in Aikai. There's a pickup basketball game on Sunday mornings. And this guy shows up and it's Jay. And Jay was there and he gives everyone a hug. Hey, and everyone was so glad to see him. And it became like a little motto in our family, like, be like Jay. Like,
yeah.
Be the guy that everyone's like psyched when you show up. And that's my goal, to like be like Jay. I want people to go, oh, hey, man, like Chris is here. Like, things are going to be better instead of, oh, Jesus.
You know who's like that?
What's that?
I said, you know who's like that?
Completely.
Carson.
I'm telling you, to a pathological degree.
Yeah.
I got like a dude crush on him like in 10 seconds,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like you guys are running toward me and like, oh, these are not your average runners. You guys are like moving like pros. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, is that guy? Like, who's that guy? Like it was that kind of impression. Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'm a lucky lady.
Lucky goes two ways. Yeah, for sure.
Well, this has been so wonderful. I feel like we have to do a follow-up episode. Thanks so much.
Same time next week.
Same time next week. Let's do it.
Wouldn't it be cool if every time you did a podcast, I just came like, hey, guys.
I'm back.
Popped in for a couple minutes and then bolt again.
Yeah.
Anyway, says thank you. I really enjoyed it a lot too.
Yeah, this was awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to the BeRad Podcast.
Yeah, the ADHD podcast.
The ADHD podcast, you and me. All right. Woohoo.
All right.
How weird was that, dude? We just all over the place.
That was awesome.
This is what I think you guys